People talk about the core wound, and my core wound was I don't deserve love, and I wasn't grounded in myself. I kept seeking outside love and support instead of really having the deep revelation that it's all internal, the connection with source and self. I was living in New York City and I was drinking most days. I was sleeping around most days. I remember reflecting and just kind of looking at myself like, brother, you are not successful at all. This is not a version of your success that you were planning on living. These were all coping mechanisms. The challenge of being sober is more difficult than choosing to put toxins in my body.
If someone listening to this were struggling with addiction, for example, what did you learn in all of your studying to be able to maybe shed some light into it for them to kind of help?
Yeah, I took a course called
Hello, Project Ultimate Lifers. Welcome. We have Brandon Mills here, who is going to be sharing his story about how he became a brilliant musician and all of the lessons that he's learned along the way. So, Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, your history, how you got to where you are here today.
Yeah. Life's been good to me. I've chosen to stay in challenge most of my life, which created a resilience and a strength and discipline that I'm proud of. Man, I don't know, how far do you want to go back?
Just a quick synopsis.
Sure. Okay. Grew up in the suburbs of Chicago with two brothers, one older, one younger, two beautiful parents. Joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. Became a reconnaissance Marine, a scout sniper, special forces unit of the military. Deployed to Afghanistan in 2005. Deployed to Iraq in 2007. That'll come into play as we, continue to conversate. But when I got out of the military, I traveled the world for about 3 years. Part of it was seeking the new, the challenge, the unknown. Part of it was running away from some trauma that I had been avoiding and didn't know how to deal with. Oh, what else, man? I've lived in California. I've lived in Hawaii. I've lived in New York City. I now reside in Nashville, Tennessee. I got into plant medicine about 2017. That's been incredibly crucial to my coming of age, my healing, my self-love. I've been playing music since I was in 4th grade. Started with the saxophone, and now I'm a full-time musician. I do folk Americana music, and like I said, I live in Nashville, and I just love my life.
So Brandon and I have just met at the Dr. Joe Dispenza's retreat, and he was one of those souls who I feel like we immediately connected and was excited to kind of touch base and get to learn from one another. So what were some of the biggest things that you learned? I heard you talk about some of the challenges, right, that you had to heal from. What were those?
Well, I mean, if you go back from like childhood, my biological father abandoned my mother when I was born, and in those early formidable years. I think that caused a lot of people talk about the core wound, and my core wound was I don't deserve love. And I think I felt that as a young child from the subconscious level as the rejection from my father. Growing up, we moved around a lot as little kids. Like every 3 or 4 years, we were in a new school. And that created a little bit of difficulty for me. I was a very introverted child. I learned how to become extroverted because it was the only way I was going to connect with new people. The military proved to be quite a challenge for me. I saw some things that were hard to process, and the culture in the military didn't really give us the tools. In fact, they kind of discouraged accessing those tools. We had access to a psychologist, but they're like, don't go see the psychologist. So I got out. I was a very dedicated Christian at the time, and I went and worked in a lot of different nonprofit Christian sectors in the world, everywhere from Mozambique to Israel. And I don't know if those were traumatic, but I wasn't grounded in myself. I kept seeking outside love and support instead of really having the deep revelation that it's all internal, the connection with source and self,
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a wild, beautiful ride. And I've worked through a lot of trauma as a result to be able to be a man who feels like he's thriving right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, thank you.
Without trying to pry too deep, what were some of these traumas that you experienced, and how did they present themselves in your life to let you know that this is something you had to work on to heal?
Yeah, I was probably 27. I was living in New York City, 27, 28. I was living in New York City, and I was doing cocaine most days. I was drinking most days. I was sleeping around most days. And I remember reflecting and just kind of looking at myself like, brother, you are not successful at all. This is not a version of your success that you were planning on living. And so I had to take a really hard look at myself. Um, New York itself is challenging to live in. And with the PTSD that was coming up, these were all coping mechanisms. These were all like the challenge of being sober is more difficult than choosing to put toxins in my body.
I agree.
Yeah, so I know this now. I didn't know it then. I've done a lot of study in addiction to really understand it because I have a lot of family members and military brothers and sisters that have gone through trauma and self-medicate. And so I left New York City when I was 33 and maybe 32 and kind of went on this healing journey. In 2017, I sat with ayahuasca. I was just fascinated with the testimonies of so many people of like, this is incredible. This will change your life. It's 10 years of psychotherapy in 10 hours. I'm like, okay, let's go. I want this. And that was really the opening, blossoming lotus flower kind of ordeal where I was like, there's something to this. But then I went back and I didn't integrate anything I had learned. I just went back to drinking and doing drugs and sleeping with women. But there was something that had opened that couldn't get closed, right? So when I moved to Nashville, I kept getting presented opportunities to sit with medicine again. I desired a new way of living. Now I can understand I was responding to trauma and I didn't have any of the tools. So I started investing a lot of time, energy, and finances into optimizing my health internally, externally, and all of, psychologically, emotionally. That led me to the place I am now. But I guess to answer your question, I was looking at myself and my life and reflecting upon it, and I was very unhappy with the decisions I was making, and I knew there was a better way to do this. So I've always been a seeker ever since I was a young kid.
Very cool.
Yeah.
If someone listening to this were struggling with addiction, for example, what did you learn in all of your studying to be able to maybe shed some light into it for them to kind of help?
Yeah. I took a course called Training Camp for the Soul, which talks about somatic healing. And it talks about how the body is so intelligent. When these triggers come up and they create an impulsivity to avoid, to drink, to go do whatever you want to do, to avoid the to avoid the present moment, you can tap into the somatic, which is your body. You can talk to it. You can acknowledge where the pain point is coming up. You can ask your body to teach you, to reveal to you where this stuck energy is, which is usually a past memory. It's always been a past memory for me. And it will really quickly and accurately and lovingly take you back to these pain points in your earlier childhood, usually between the ages of like 3 to 8, where we're not really in consciousness. We're in the subconscious level, theta, delta, these really magical places that as an adult I'm trying to get back to all the time. And the body will reveal these stories or these experiences that created a story, a limited belief that in turn created a character trait that manifests itself as a traumatic response. Does that all make sense? So getting clear with that, and I used to do it with people who are experts in this field, and I would recommend people do that. But you can even do it on your own. You can sit with your body. So let's say like a lot of things were showing up for me in my solar plexus, in my third chakra. And I would sit with that. I would describe the feeling. I would acknowledge that the feeling was taking place. It was a dissonance. It was an incoherence in the body. I would acknowledge that this was taking place. I would start describing the shape, the size, the color. And as I continued to sit with it with love and observation without judgment, it would start to reveal these things. So we can go back to the core wound. I don't deserve love. I was able to extrapolate that back down to my like early years of childhood, where I was watching my father abuse my mother, and the man who's supposed to protect me was not showing up in a protective role. So my limiting belief is I don't deserve love. Well, what you do is you transform that experience. You either take the highest self of your mother or your father or yourself as an adult, which is fun. You go back and speak to that child, give them what they need. The body will tell you what they need. You might need to have been held. You might need a more positive affirmation. And you get to sit there and give that younger self, that younger version of yourself, what you needed at the time. And then you create these positive affirmations. So instead of I don't deserve love, it is I receive all love. I am love. Um, you take those affirmations. There's usually a massive energetic purge. There's a really like a lightness that comes forward in all of this. And then you use these affirmations for the next 2-3 weeks, maybe the rest of your life, to affirm the real truth as opposed to the limiting belief that you grew up with. Is that making sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another methodology that I use is plant medicine. I've sat with some incredible maestros, facilitators, shamans, if you want to call them that have presented a beautiful, safe container for me to drink this medicine that has incredible intelligence and help work through some of these past experiences without judgment, just observing and finding the bigger perspective. A lot of the times, it helps me realize you were doing the best that you could at the time. You didn't know. Look how far you've come, and reminds you of how much love is available.
How would you define love? I feel like some people could hear this and be like, "Oh, so woo,"
Totally.
But
Yeah.
how would you define? Because I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone else didn't, how would you say
Yeah,
that?
it's interesting that you say that's because most other languages in the world have multiple definitions of the word love. They have individual words to describe different types of love. In English, we have just love. So for me, that's a beautiful question. For me, I would say it's connection to source. You can call it infinite intelligence. You can call that the collective consciousness. You can call that God. Whatever works for you. There's an intelligence that exists beyond our comprehension that we can have access to. So it's connection to that, and I would say it's also connection to self. Truly loving self. And if we're really honest with ourselves, most people don't love themselves enough to feel settled in their own body, to feel proud, to feel connected. And I think I equate it often to like the unconditional love that a healthy parent will give their children, being able to treat oneself that way. Because I still make mistakes all the time, but now my inner dialogue is like, oh, well, you messed that up. That's okay. All good. Love you, bro. Let's be conscious of that, and let's not make that a habit, and let's do better next time. But I used to yell at myself. My internal dialogue was so coarse and sharp. It reminded me of a drill instructor from like the Marine Corps boot camp. It was very like demanding. It was very negative. It was very harsh. There was like a hate in there. There was judgment. It's probably the best word. And just kind of letting all of that go and dropping into cohesion, which is what Dr. Joe was teaching this whole past week. Cohesion in the heart, cohesion in the brain, cohesion in the energy centers that create a connection with this infinite intelligence and self that I've never experienced before.
Awesome. What kind of a mindset does it take? People talk a lot about mindset.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of a mindset do you think that it takes for somebody to overcome some of their traumas? And what do they need to build that to be able to step into that next version of themselves and let their past selves go?
Yeah, beautiful question. I think a lot of it is honesty, authenticity, really looking at oneself from a non-egoic standpoint and kind of reflecting like what am I experiencing in my day-to-day life that is out of alignment with my highest self. And if you can ask that question and you can be honest at the answer, and you get still enough that the body and the mind will speak to you with this intelligence that exists that most people dismiss or just haven't tuned into. And so I think it's getting still and quiet. I think meditation is remarkable. I think plant medicines are remarkable for this. The acknowledgement of that, and then the desire to change. I remember I was probably 33 before I ever invested finances into a program that said I'm going to make I'm gonna create an opportunity to be taught by counselors, by wise people, to help me heal, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of that would go back to my poverty mindset as a child. My parents were very poverty mindset, and that they were doing the best they could with what they knew at the
Mm-hmm.
time, and it created in me a inability to invest in self, which is a perfect example of like self-love. Do you invest in yourself? Do you make those healthy decisions to say like this is worth it? And the universe is so abundant that it will not only give me exactly what I'm investing, it will give me more,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think getting clear with that, and then I think seeking counsel. For a long time, I read books, and there was a efficacy there that was beautiful, but it wasn't until like the one-on-one, like opening my heart, letting individuals really see who I am, and loving me through that, and helping me equip myself to have better answers, better reflections, more compassion, more empathy for self.
Something that you said that really speaks to me, because now at this age and stage of my life, I also feel completely aligned
Mm.
from thoughts, feelings, actions, beliefs.
Yeah.
How would you define alignment? And how would someone go about understanding within if they are acting in alignment with one's true self?
Yeah, these are great questions. I think the first thing that came to my mind was integrity with self, like really knowing intuitively, like so connected to self in the form of intuition. Does this feel good? Does this feel like an alignment with the future I'm trying to create or the person I want to be today? Am I in integrity with my decisions? Am I in integrity with my disciplines and the way that I'm speaking to people, speaking to myself? Am I choosing what is right over what's convenient? Whether that be like disciplines within the body, working out, meditation, taking care of self, eating healthy, hydrating, simple things, but profound things. These are the things that stack up over the course of 10 years that create the person that you become, right? So I think that this is a really cool way to do this. And I was encouraged by a mentor of mine to create a mission statement. And then when things get overwhelming, grab that mission statement and say, if I make this decision, is this in alignment with my mission statement? If it's not, then it's a no. If it's a yes, then I can move forward. And that really simplifies things a lot for me.
What is your mission statement?
I am a man who creates, who has powerful influence to create massive healing through art, music, and my life.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mine is to travel the world and inspire, empower, and motivate people to live happy, healthy, more fulfilling lives.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, cheers
I
to
love
the
that.
mission statement.
You're doing it.
Yeah. Now, you're a musician.
I am.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about what that's like, your music, what's influenced your music.
Sure. Yeah, so let's see. I was in fifth grade when I started picking up a saxophone, and I just remember going downstairs in my basement, my parents' basement, and playing all the time, completely enamored with the saxophone and learning jazz and blues, and I loved it. And then we moved from Kentucky to Illinois, and they wanted me to be in the jazz band. I'm sorry, they wanted me to be in the marching band, to be in the jazz band. I was like, no, I'm way too cool for that. And I'm a brand new freshman. It's not happening. I'm not doing that. But music kept calling me back. So my friend who was in a band was like, we need a bass player. Do you play bass? I'm like, yeah, I play bass. So I learned bass. And then at 16, I picked up a guitar and I started singing. And that was it for me. That was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I'm a poet. I want to express myself through my music. I want to change people's mindsets like immediately, because we all have songs. I think everyone I've ever met has songs that radically changed them in that 3 to 4 minutes of first hearing that song. And they're part of your memories and they're part of your experiences, and they connect to that emotional part of self so dramatically and powerfully. And so I joined the Marine Corps. I was playing music, but I wasn't committed to it. Got out of the Marine Corps and went and made a bunch of money because I thought that would create fulfillment. And I had a bunch of money and I wasn't happy. And I was reading Proverbs. Proverbs was written by this man named King Solomon. A lot of people believe him to be one of the wisest men on earth.
And richest.
And richest, yes. And I think those are connected. Wisdom and wealth are connected. And he said, when your hope is deferred, your heart is sick. And I felt like the Spirit told me, your heart is sick. And I was like, what? Why? He goes, because I've created you to be an artist and you're doing everything except being an artist. So um, go back to being an artist. So King Solomon says in Proverbs, when your hope is deferred, your heart is sick. And the Spirit was talking to me and said, your heart is sick. And I was like, why is that? He's like, I've created you to be a musician and an artist and a poet and a warrior, and you're not doing any of those things. You're not in the challenge, and you're not in the creation. You're not co-creating with me. You're just getting a paycheck and making a bunch of money, and you're not fulfilled. And I was like, okay, cool. Heard, what should I do? And I decided to go to New York City and study audio engineering program at a very renowned school. And I said, I'm going to commit my life to this because I'm passionate about it, and it fulfills me. It fills me up. I love the idea of co-creating with the universe, conspiring with the universe through art, through your life, and through your mission statement, through your message, to really affect positive change in humanity and in self as well.
Yeah, absolutely. What have been some of the most powerful lessons that you've learned throughout your lifetime, both in music and also just in life, in your experiences?
Yeah. A friend of mine who's a medicine carrier, he said our entire reason for human existence is to learn how to love ourselves. And to me, that was so profound and so deeply simple. That was a turning point for me. I have some poems that have really changed my life. There's a woman named Marianne Williamson, and she has a poem from a book called A Return to Love. I can't do the whole poem, but I can do the first few lines. It says, our greatest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us most. And so for me, it's like always about this like seeking of source, infinite intelligence. I'm always like, there's more to this, which Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about a lot. And how can I access that? You know? And so for me, it's like, how can I simplify my life to be in tune with self and be aware and conscious of everything that I'm doing in order to allow myself to love myself and others more, find more empathy and compassion for self and others, and create a positive change in the world through just my very being, my very energetic levels and my consciousness and my love. Yeah.
If someone were listening to your music, what would you think that what would you hope that they would either take away or experience through what you're trying to say?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I just recorded an album that I'll be putting out on Patreon over the next few months. And it's fascinating. All of the songs, and if I look at my entire catalog of songs, there's always a point in me as a writer that hits this stuck point, this challenge, this discouragement, this hopelessness, this sadness. And then I find ways to continue to be hopeful and courageous and heal and move forward. And so I think all of my art is interwoven with that dialogue and with that reflection in because it's been my life. You know, I'm actually working on writing like happier songs because I'm in a really good space right now.
Right.
But a lot of my art came out as Brandon's in a hard time. Brandon needs to process this. Brandon's going to use music to do that. And then through the music, as I'm writing it, I'm finding this like hope, finding this like courage inside of all of that, and really welcoming the pain as a great teacher, and also taking all of those lessons and like making them art, and then giving me more authority to speak and have the presence of mind to like impact people who are going through the same thing or something similar.
If someone were at the beginning of their journey, or they're at some place in their life where they're ready to make massive transformation and change and shift from where they are, what advice would you give them to kind of help maybe motivate them or inspire them to get on the track for them to be able to find their own alignment and purpose and path and fulfillment?
I love that. Yeah, great question again. You're crushing it with these questions. First and foremost, learn how to love self, whatever that looks like. Spend a dedicated amount of time like seeking your own internal self. And I know that sounds very general, but that can be through meditation, that could be through silence, that could be through introspection, that could be through stress, healthy stress. Challenge yourself. Do the things that scare you, because on the other side of fear is courage. On the other side of the unknown is like experience and adventure. You know, choose a path that is aligned with your intuition and learn what your intuition is by getting still and discovering self. And that's going to require being uncomfortable. It's going to require being lonely. It's going to require not going out every night. It's going to require getting honest with yourself. Be
radical honesty.
Radical honesty and integrity for sure. I'm a huge fan. If you're an artist, although I think this is great for everybody, there's a book called The War of Art: Winning Your Inner Creative Battles by Stephen Pressfield. That book changed my life. Rick Rubin's book. I can't remember the name. It's right up there. But Rick Rubin's newest book, phenomenal. Go seek. Be a seeker. Seek self. Seek mentorship. Seek wisdom. Seek love. It's fulfillment. Do hard shit.
Do hard shit.
Do hard shit. Find joy in it. Let pain be a beautiful teacher for you instead of an opponent. Everyone really, really, really fucking knows what they want to do. A lot of times they justify, they dismiss it because it's too difficult or too challenging. But the moment you get still enough, everybody has that small still voice in their internal that says, this is what you're supposed to do. In the meantime, while you're trying to figure that out and you're trying to overcome the fear of failing in that, seek wisdom and be around people who are inspiring you. Study the greats who are doing what you want to do. And again, learn to love yourself. Compassion and empathy are two of the most attractive things in all of humanity that I've witnessed, and I've been all around the world. But that all starts with self.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Yeah.
Until next time. Cheers.
Cheers.